Hey everybody, and welcome back. So I'm calling it. This is the beginning of the end of Doug Ford, of his leadership with the PC Party, and of course being the Premier of Ontario. It's okay; he'll be fine. Once he's out, he's gonna go run for the mayor of Toronto because he loves Toronto. He's been doing nothing but getting in the business of Toronto since he's been Premier, so he'll be okay. Toronto, up to you guys if you vote him in. That's on you. But the reason why I'm calling it now, that this is the beginning of the end of his career in politics for the Premier of Ontario, is his comments on a poll that just came out. So I'm going to let him give his comments, and we're going to discuss.
We've got a change since last year when the last election was held. In fact, this poll is suggesting that things are a lot closer than they were at that point. In fact, that the PCs have dropped, the Liberals have risen. So let's have a closer look at these numbers. At this point, we are being told that the PCs are getting about 40% support. The provincial Liberals about 36% support, The official opposition, NDP, at 17%, and the Greens at 5%. And that's based on 1,000 Ontarians being polled at the end of last week with that margin of error of 3.1%. That said, it is one poll, and Premier Doug Ford was at an event this morning and he took issue with it. Have a listen.
You know, polls are for dogs. And the only poll that counts is on election day. So all these pollsters, they're a little biased, pushing up one, bringing down the other. The people will decide. The people will decide if they want to go back to tax and spend governments, chasing 300,000 jobs out of the province. We've gained 1 million jobs. We've never raised taxes. If they want a tax and spend government, we aren't the ones.
So Ford making it very clear he doesn't agree with this or any other poll for that matter. That said, let's put this one into perspective. Back in October, the PCs were at 47% according to Liaison. Now they're at 40%. The Liberals climbing, especially in the GTA, with a 10-point lead in this area, effectively tied in the 905 area. One of the observations being made is that the Liberals don't have a leader right now to be targeted, much like Bonnie Crombie was when she was actually the leader last year and for years before that. So Bonnie Crombie not in place. Now the Liberals are wondering and waiting, and surely when they do have a leader in place. The poll mainly a reflection on how the Ford government is handling the current state of affairs on many fronts, including the efforts to handle the trade war with the U.S. And here's what the principal at Liaison Strategies had to say.
What we've been seeing now for quite some time, people think the province is doing, a lot of different things, but generally speaking, they think it's going in the wrong direction. And so what we're seeing, whenever we do issue questions, a lot of people disagree with the premier is doing, and then still tell us that they're voting for him. It almost seems like all of those different issues have caught up to the premier, and now people are going, well, why are we voting for him if we don't agree with what he's doing?
And I should note on another note, this morning at this press conference, Premier Ford said he did in fact watch President Trump's State of the Union address last night and almost jumped through the television 16 times. So watching closely, had a few words to say about tariffs and trade this morning as well. But when it comes to this poll, he wants to make sure that he stays on top of those things in order to bring those numbers back up.
Okay. Two things I want to get off right away, okay, is when you start saying polls don't matter, like, I don't want to say this because, people like abuse it, that sounds like Trump. He's not Trump. He's not Trump. He's not Trump. But when you say things like that, you have certain characteristics like Trump, okay, where you don't believe things that you don't like. As a politician, you could say, well, it's only one poll. Like even the gentleman here said, it's only one poll, okay? But it's also data to show you and your party what the people are what they like, what they don't like, what they're upset about, so you can attend to their concerns. Okay? But you stating polls are nothing but for dogs, that means you don't care about data, you don't care about truth, like Donald Trump. And there's other examples like that. They didn't care about data or truth, like the speed cameras. Took those away. Didn't care about all the statistical data that showed to reduce the speed, which reducing the speed shows to save lives. I know people say it didn't save lives because, there was no deaths that it saved, but it saves lives. If you reduce danger, you will save lives. Didn't look at any of those statistical data. Didn't bring any of his data that say all his measures will work and they work better than cameras. We're still waiting for those. And it's coming out that those speed reducing measures for the roads are going to take years to implement and millions of dollars for each city that taxpayers like myself who obey the speed limits will have to pay. The only reason he took, again, my assumption, he took those speed cameras, it was based on emotion. That was nothing but a tax grab. You're hurting innocent taxpayers. Most likely he got booked multiple times, which came out that a lot of his MPPs using government vehicles had got clocked speeding in school zones. So at the end of that segment, they talked about how Doug Ford's going to stay on top of those numbers or on top of that information. But I thought it was nothing but polls for dogs. I thought the only thing that mattered was when it came to election, who the people vote for. Agree with you 100%. Up until election day, it all matters on who people vote for. However, the polls are indicators in what direction they're going to go. And also, polls are used to show people like yourself what people are upset with. You can't talk to everybody. I know he goes around and says, I talk to people on the street, which is great. You want to talk to people, but you can't talk to 15 million people in Ontario. That's what these polls are for, to give you a general idea of what they're upset or where they're going. So this is my opinion this is it. If he doesn't take this serious, he's done. And from that comment, it looks like he's not taking it serious because he's got, I don't know, like he thinks he's the top of the world because he's won the election so many times. So let's take a look at some of the reasons why people are upset with the PC party, the current PC party here in Ontario. What has Doug Ford done for Ontario? Okay, let's look at the things that he's been doing right now. Okay, he's been fighting with Toronto in the bike lanes. Okay, spending taxpayer money on a Toronto problem. Talks about how Torontonians don't like it. Who cares? That's their problem. If they don't like it, they vote for their rights, what they want, but they vote for their city councilors and their mayor. If they didn't want bike lanes, they would vote people who would take them out. Stay out of their business. Okay, but you're spending our taxpayer money to fight them on that. Like I said, speed cameras, motions, but now people's lives, school zones, everything else, people are in danger, especially kids. The only people who were upset about those speed cameras were the ones who were speeding and got caught. Taking over the school boards. Again, what are you doing? What are you doing? Those are elected officials, trustees. They were elected to those boards. Now you can help taxpayers by mandating what the board needs to do in terms of bringing their numbers under control, but taking them over, they're elected. Return to office mandates. This is a big one and why I think the numbers are going up. Again, no data. Doesn't look at the data. People were doing their jobs. The jobs were getting done. But in his mind was, you need to get back to work. Meaning if you're not in the office, you're not working. So basically you're spitting in the face of those workers. And he always talks about how he's for the worker. But he believes you're not working unless you're in the job or in the office, sorry. So now those workers have to go back to the office, which they don't have enough office space. They're still scrounging to get some, which is now going to cost us taxpayers more money to bring them back when they don't need to be in the office 5 days a week. The hybrid system was working. Increased traffic. So now we have to spend more on roads, more on mass transit, increased costs for those individuals going and traveling to and from work. Less time with their family, more stressed with work. They didn't like it. No justification whatsoever for it. And the latest one, OSAP. His comments were that he had an anecdotal story of students buying $1,000 watches instead of paying their OSAP. Again, going back to feelings. Have you ever really thought, like sometimes these stories you hear, it's like the game telephone. One person tells a story, probably has some truth on it, and then they tell it to somebody else tell it to somebody else, and so on and so forth. It's changed hands 10 times. The story has also been manipulated and changed 10 times. So that story of $1,000 watch that people are buying instead of OSAP is not true. And he's making a decision which is affecting thousands of students and their future based on a fictional story. So those students who are voters are also pissed. Not only that, he's telling them, you guys are picking the wrong degree. There's a discussion on that. I'm okay with having a discussion on where people should be going to study. And that starts in high school on pointing the students in the right direction in a field that they can excel at and support their family, grow a family, and help the community. But you tell them that they're stupid and making the wrong choice, and not only that, we're going to punish you by allowing the universities to jack up their price. We're not going to give you any more grants that allowed you to get money without paying it back, and you're going to have to take out bigger loans. So it's going to take you longer to pay those loans back, which increases the probability of defaulting on them. Unless you're a doctor or lawyer, I was looking at the stats, unless you're a doctor or lawyer, all the other subjects have roughly the same default rates with OSAP. Doctors, lawyers have like a 0 default rate, of course, but not everybody could be a doctor and a lawyer. Even engineers, the engineering firms, biometrics or biomedical nurses, they all have roughly the same default rates with OSAP. So you've insulted all these students, the future of Ontario, instead of encouraging them, helping them out to start a better life with less burden in terms of financial situations, like what we see horrendously in the US, because we're headed towards that direction. Then we have lack of GPs and doctors, wait times in hospitals. It didn't get better while Doug Ford has been Premier of Ontario. It's gotten worse. Yes, we're building hospitals. Yes, we're bringing doctors in. But this is information that they know 10 years down the road of what they need to do to invest. He has this soft spot for Toronto and mass transit. And that's all he's been focusing on, a lot of the budget and stuff. And Toronto does need it. Don't get me wrong. They're 30 years behind. However, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can do mass transit. You can invest in education. And you can invest in the healthcare system. Even with the federal government helping with their pharmacare program for myself, diabetics and contraceptions, they were going to give them a program or some money to help so that everybody, no matter how much you make or what insurance programs you have, you will have access to insulin products. And like myself, type 1 diabetes, I require this to stay alive. There's a lot of people like myself. He has yet to sign on for that. And wanting to build a tunnel back to that, this love of transportation, wants to build a tunnel under the 401. Years, decades, and billions of dollars would go to waste to build this tunnel that we will not see in a lot of us in our lifetime, with the population growing and everything else, we can better use that money for something else. Again, you can deal with traffic by allowing the people have a hybrid work schedule. Keep those people off the roads. That costs us nothing. Saves us on transportation costs, saves on taxpayers having to increase transportation by building a tunnel. People are happier. Everybody's a win-win and it costs us nothing. Yet he's still moving forward with this feasibility for the 401 tunnel, which they've already done. I think it was $10 million that they spent. Didn't like the answer, so they've commissioned someone else to do it. Another one. Don't worry about wasting money. You know, the $75 million that Doug Ford spent to try to tell the American people tariffs are bad and pissed off Donald Trump. Taxpayer money just to piss off Donald Trump. Again, what kind of decision was that? So these are many examples of more that I have yet to say or he has done. This is why Ontarians are starting to get tired. Even during this trade war, he really can't, except for taking American booze out of the shelves, which I support 100%. He did a great job on that. But then he started to think he could do the same thing with Diageo and Crown Royal, which would hurt American jobs, hurt Canadian jobs. And then he got a deal, which was not a good deal. Of the $24 million Diageo said they were going to spend, only $1 million is going towards the township of Amherstburg. The rest is going to Toronto and other areas of Ontario. So he even got a shitty deal on that. During this trade war, he has done nothing to help Ontario. He hasn't brought any manufacturing. All the deals are being made by Mark Carney, which is understandable because he's part of the federal government. And he has the ability to make these trade deals with other nations. However, he could be going on some of these trade missions or sending an envoy with Mark Carney to help bring in some manufacturing, like the procurements that Canada should be building for military supplies. What's he been doing on that? We have a vast manufacturing infrastructure here in Ontario. Has he made any deals? Has he brokered any deals? Has he made a deal with Mark, even the one with China, where he was saying, oh, the EVs from China is going to be bad and no good. Mark Carney had one little meeting with him, explained him like a child how this would be good, and we would only allow more Chinese vehicles to be sold in Canada, if they started manufacturing. And then when he goes, oh, shoot, you're right. That would be good for Ontario. Then he backtracked. He's a bull in a china shop, stubborn and doesn't listen to reason. You have to explain to him like a child. And that's why Ontarians are starting to say this guy's all fluff. And I think it's time for a change. Now, again, it's one poll. But the poll is showing the direction. It's going up. And the support for the PCs is coming down. So he'd be dumb not to take this serious. The only reason the Liberals did so bad in the last election is they didn't have a good leader. Bonnie Comby was not a good leader. She wasn't, I don't know. She did, I don't know anything about her in terms of Mississauga. If anybody lives in Mississauga, let me know what you thought of her when she was the mayor of Mississauga. But it was more of her just trying to get into an opportunity. Nothing to do with doing what was right for Ontario and Ontarians. She had no message. And that's what people voted on. There was no message from the Liberals. Doug Ford was not doing anything bad at the time. They figured just keep the status quo. There was no need for change. But now they're seeing that, yeah, I think there's need for change. So that's why I'm saying this is the beginning of the end. Because when you start denying polls, you're done. You're done. I don't care what your philosophy is. I understand it doesn't matter until people vote, but it's also an indicator. So if he doesn't take this to heart, if he doesn't take this serious, he's done. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. Let me know what you think. What you think he's done. What great things he's done. Please let me know. I'd like to know. And if you are in the same boat as me, where I think it's time for a change. It's still a ways away until we have an election, but this is the beginning of the end. Anyways, guys, take care. We'll talk later.